My name is Alice, and I'm 28 years old. I work with kids. I recently got engaged to my boyfriend Tom. This is my first time visiting his parents' house. Tom went to a really good university and has a cool job at a big company. He's super smart and everyone respects him at work. I've always looked up to him. His dad seems happy about us getting married and even mentioned how they've never had a daughter and his wife will be excited. But I noticed that Tom's mom, who was sitting next to him, didn't seem too happy. It's been bothering me. She looked like she was mad, her face all scrunched up. Then out of nowhere, she asks, "I heard you didn't finish high school, is that true? Our Tom is top-notch, graduated from a big-shot university. Do you really think I'd be okay with him marrying someone like you?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. "Mom, that's really uncalled for. You're being mean to Alice," I said, defending my fiancé. "Yeah, Mom, what matters is how we feel about each other," Tom chimed in. Both Tom and his dad had my back, but it only seemed to make her angrier. Isn't it normal for a mom to care about who her son is marrying? Kids take after their moms, right? "I want the best for my family," she argued, not backing down. It seemed like she wasn't going to accept me, a high school dropout, because she wanted the best for her kids. Some people really care about what degrees you have, and parents often value education a lot. It felt really disheartening to be judged just because I didn't finish high school. But there's more to my story. I didn't drop out for no reason. After my dad died in a car crash, my mom struggled to take care of me and my twin sister, Emma. I had to step up and start working after middle school to help out. Now, I'm going to night school to get my diploma. I'm also saving up money, and I might even go to college someday. Tom is totally on board with this plan and has offered to pitch in for my college expenses. He understands where I'm coming from, and he's always been supportive. It's one of the reasons I fell for him. But it seems like my future mother-in-law isn't too happy about it. Tom doesn't have any siblings, so we'll be moving in with his parents eventually. I'm a bit anxious about how that's going to work out. A while later, I moved into their house with only a month left until our wedding. As the big day got closer, I had to make frequent trips to the venue for final checks and arrange hotels for our out-of-town guests. Between work, school, and wedding planning, I was swamped. But my mother-in-law didn't seem too happy with how I was handling things. Today, as I was putting on makeup to go to the venue, she suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my, what are you wearing?" She couldn't help commenting on my outfit. "I'm getting ready to go to the venue, so I wanted to look nice," I explained. Whether she was unhappy with me dressing up for the occasion or just looking for an excuse to criticize me, I couldn't tell. You said you're going to the venue, but you're dressed like that just to catch some attention, aren't you? You should be more careful," she remarked. She just assumed I was meeting up with a guy instead of going to the venue. I was stunned. I assured her I was meeting Tom at the venue and suggested she ask him if she had doubts. But she wouldn't listen and insisted I was meeting someone else. Then, out of nowhere, she messed up my carefully styled hair. "What are you doing, Mom?" "I spent ages on my hair. Now it's ruined," I protested. With my hair all messy, I couldn't leave like that, so I had to fix it. But instead of apologizing, she said, "Don't bother fixing it. This messy look suits a dropout like you. You should wear it like this for the wedding." I was already running late, so I quickly fixed my hair and headed to the venue, where Tom was waiting. He noticed something was off with me, but I didn't want to bring up what happened with his mom before discussing the ceremony, so I kept quiet about what happened with Tom for now. Then, as the wedding day drew closer, my mother-in-law surprised us with a suggestion. "Hey, doesn't Alice's mom live far away? It must be hard for her to come and stay in a hotel. Why not have her stay with us?" Tom and I were taken aback by her sudden offer. It seemed like a good idea to save money on hotel bills and help our families bond. Tom thought I should talk to my mom about it, so I did. My mom was thrilled with the idea, and we decided to bring my twin sister, Emma, along too. At first, I thought my mother-in-law was being kind, but I had no idea what she would do next. The day before the wedding, my mom and sister arrived to stay at my in-laws' house. Seeing my mom and sister, who I hadn't seen in ages, brought me so much joy. My bond with my sister is super tight, and we were thrilled to be together again. We decided to share a room for the night. Emma, who had a bit to drink, was out like a light as soon as she hit the pillow. Once she's out, I chuckled to myself. Just as I was thinking of hitting the hay too, I heard the door creak open. Wondering who it could be, I heard a loud buzzing noise and the sound of hair being shaved. "Now you won't be showing up at the ceremony tomorrow, will you? No need for hair on a dropout like you," my mother-in-law said. I was stunned. I quickly flipped on the lights and exclaimed, "Mother-in-law, what on earth are you doing?" The person in the bed suddenly sat up, surprising us both. "Huh? Mother-in-law, you've got the wrong person. I'm Alice," I clarified, realizing she mistook me for Emma. "I'm sorry, Mom, but it's not my hair. Emma and I are twins, and we look really similar," I clarified. "But it wasn't me who got her hair shaved. It was my sister, Emma." "What? No way. Why didn't it happen to Alice?" My mother-in-law was clearly shocked, but Emma, who had a bit too much to drink, was fast asleep. "When she wakes up and sees her shaved head in the morning, she'll definitely be furious. Emma's got a fiery temper, so it's pretty obvious she'll be mad as heck. What are you going to do now, Mom?" "I can't cover for you," I admitted, feeling guilty. Maybe my mother-in-law left the room looking pale. The next morning, when Emma saw herself in the mirror and realized she was bald, she was both shocked and furious. Our mom, who was there, couldn't hold back her tears, and Tom looked really upset. "This is awful. Who could have done such a thing?" So I spilled the beans about what happened the previous day in front of everyone. I wondered how my mother-in-law would react when she woke up, but she wasn't around. My father-in-law told me she had mentioned going for an early morning walk and hadn't come back yet. I started to worry that she might have left, so I decided to tell our family everything and began looking for her. About 30 minutes later, a relative called to say they found her at a nearby convenience store, and my father-in-law went to get her. When she got back home, seemingly unaware of the search, she immediately started making excuses. "I didn't do anything wrong. It's all Alice's fault. She used the clippers herself and shaved Emma's hair while she was sleeping," she claimed, much to my surprise. My mother-in-law was trying to blame me for everything, which left me completely stunned. I couldn't hold back and retorted, "That's absurd. I didn't do anything wrong. Weren't you the one who entered the room yesterday? It's unbelievable that you're still lying." But she was adamant about not admitting her mistake. Then my father-in-law seemed to recall something and went outside, returning with something in his hand. "Alice, could this be the clipper?" As I looked at the clipper he held, it was unmistakably the one my mother-in-law used to shave off Emma's hair last night. "That's it. That's the clipper." But where was it? It turned out that the clipper originally belonged to my father-in-law, who always cared about his appearance and carried grooming tools with him. When they checked the car, where he kept his grooming tools, they found it had been rummaged through and the clipper was missing. "I always leave my car keys in the bedroom. If there's brown hair in this clipper, then it's clear your mom is the culprit," he stated as he began to disassemble the clipper. The clipper contained unmistakable brown hair, clearly from Emma. She must have hurriedly left in the dark and didn't properly clean up the hair, my mother-in-law admitted, dropping to her knees as she noticed the evidence. "Alice, it's all your fault. You, a dropout with no money, tricked intelligent Tom. I wanted you out of Tom's life at any cost," she'd accused, leaving me feeling disgusted by her selfishness. Emma, who was most affected by her actions, was furious. "I don't care about your excuses. What are you going to do about this? I can't go to the wedding like this," she demanded. Upon hearing Emma's distress, my father-in-law made a quick call. Luckily, a friend who was a hairstylist agreed to come over immediately with a wig. While this would temporarily solve Emma's hair dilemma, we couldn't just ignore what my mother-in-law had done. 30 minutes later, father-in-law's friend arrived with the wig, and Emma's hair looked lovely again. Initially, father-in-law contemplated shaving my mother-in-law's hair like he did with Emma, but he decided it wouldn't provide a sense of closure. Instead, he chose to confront my mother-in-law's wrongdoing in front of everyone. Among the guests invited were the landlords to whom my mother-in-law's parents had been indebted for generations. They had a good rapport with father-in-law, and news of this incident would undoubtedly affect my mother-in-law's parents' living situation. You see, these landlords, who were close friends with my in-laws, had been giving them a discounted rent. However, upon learning about my mother-in-law's actions, the landlord, known for his integrity, would likely revert the rent to its original rate or even consider eviction. My mother-in-law's parents, who are financially strained, would then have no choice but to seek refuge with my mother-in-law. However, Tom had previously mentioned that my mother-in-law didn't have a good relationship with her parents and wouldn't be willing to assist them. For my mother-in-law, having her parents move in would be the start of a living nightmare. "Wait, please. I'll be in deep trouble if you do that." "I'm sorry, it was all my fault," she pleaded. "I made a terrible mistake, and I'm deeply sorry, Emma. I'll compensate you for the damage. Please forgive me," my mother-in-law pleaded, repeatedly apologizing as she pressed her forehead against the floor. However, despite her apologies, Emma's hair couldn't magically grow back. After discussing it, we decided that my father-in-law and Tom would disclose my mother-in-law's actions. Emma had already agreed to this. Initially, my mother-in-law refused to attend the wedding and attempted to flee, but Emma and Tom prevented her from escaping. When we arrived at the venue, relatives who had been informed of the situation through messages approached us, looking extremely concerned. In front of our relatives, we exposed my mother-in-law's wrongdoing, and Emma bravely removed her wig to reveal her bald head. Everyone was shocked by Emma's appearance, especially the women, who expressed disbelief. For a woman, hair is often considered vital, so the sudden loss due to shaving was particularly distressing. Some people couldn't help but shed tears as they thought of Emma's ordeal. As expected, the landlord confronted my mother-in-law, asking if the accusations were true. Initially, she tried to deny it, but under pressure from my father-in-law, she eventually admitted her wrongdoing. The landlord, visibly angry, faced criticism from the women present as well. Throughout the ceremony, my usually spirited mother-in-law remained downcast, a stark contrast to her usual self. Despite this, the wedding proceeded smoothly, and we were blessed by the well wishes of many attendees. However, it became clear that we could no longer reside with my mother-in-law in that house. Therefore, we made the decision to move into our own apartment and start our life as a couple. Although my mother-in-law panicked at the thought of us leaving, pleading with us not to go, we knew we couldn't continue living with her. My father-in-law shared the same sentiment. He informed my mother-in-law that he intended to divorce her and asked her to vacate the premises. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law turned pale and clung to him, begging for reconsideration. She expressed concerns about where she would live, given her strained relationship with her own parents. She appeared visibly distressed, as if on the verge of collapsing. However, despite her pleas, we prioritized Emma's well-being. The fact that my own hair had been shaved off while I slept, mistaken for Emma, was a jarring realization. Despite my mother-in-law's persistent attempts to persuade us otherwise, my father-in-law contacted her parents and she reluctantly agreed to leave the house. Currently, my mother-in-law is residing with her estranged parents, where she appears to be tending to their needs. However, it seems her parents possess challenging personalities and my mother-in-law is feeling overwhelmed by their demands. Despite reaching out to us multiple times, expressing her desire for a fresh start, we have no intention of reconciling with her, so we've chosen to block her calls. Presently, my husband and I are enjoying a happy life alongside my father-in-law in his home. Recognizing that the house was quite outdated, we embarked on a renovation project together. My father-in-law constructed his dream study. My husband created a space to showcase his model figures, and I focused on installing a modern, state-of-the-art kitchen. Naturally, we also prepared a room for our future child, and now the three of us are residing comfortably. Emma's hair, which was shaved during the ordeal, has since grown into a stylish short haircut, receiving praise from her friends as a positive transformation. She often jokes about the incident with her friends, which stirs up conflicting emotions for me. Nonetheless, Emma occasionally visits our family home for sleepovers, which I eagerly anticipate. While challenges may arise in the future, I am confident that with our collective efforts, we can overcome them together.
So much is currently unfolding in my life, and I'm eager to gather some insights from fellow Redditors. I'm a 31-year-old woman with a rather peculiar relationship with my sister Becky, who is 28, not her real name, of course. Becca was born prematurely and spent several weeks in the ICU before coming home. This early experience led our parents to spoil her mercilessly. Becky grew up with everything handed to her on a silver platter, while my younger brother Sam, who is 25, and I had to accept whatever our parents deemed best for us. We often heard variations of, "You're the older sister. You need to be responsible for your poor sister." Don't be a selfish brat. You need to learn to share things with your siblings. Becky consistently received whatever she desired almost instantly, whether it was her birthday parties or when we had to step aside at our own birthday celebrations so she could blow out the candles on our cakes. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I could write a whole novel about the favoritism we experience at the hands of our parents. Strangely, I had accepted this treatment as normal and believed that Becky deserved all the nice things. However, everything changed when I was 20 and caught her in the act with my then-boyfriend on my bed. There was a lot of screaming and yelling from both sides, and I couldn't believe my baby sister had betrayed me in this manner. In the midst of the argument, Becky claimed to have a panic attack, which led my parents to swoop in and take her side, chastising me for not being mature and understanding about my poor sister's delicate state. It was at that moment that I realized my parents would always prioritize Becky above everything else. The following week, I moved out and stayed with my childhood friend, now fiancé, David, who is also 31. I tried to reach out to my parents for reconciliation after moving out, but it resulted in a heated argument. They refused to see my perspective and even denied that Becky had faked her attack. I thought this betrayal was the worst, but I was soon proven wrong. Becky started visiting my part-time job as a cashier, flaunting her relationship with my ex and deliberately making out with him in front of me. She paid no attention to the stink eyes and icy glares directed at them. She even went so far as to spread rumors that I had slept with TAs and lecturers for better grades, although my friends quickly dispelled these lies. All of these events left me increasingly depressed. I wouldn't have made it through college if it weren't for David and my friends, whom I consider myself undeserving of. 2 years ago, my father's sudden death prompted me to reach out to my mother, with whom I had been estranged since the incident with Becky. My mother seemed apologetic about the entire affair, and I felt confident enough to let her back into my life. During our reconciliation, I made it clear that Becky was not to be mentioned in my presence, nor was she to be a part of my life. My mother appeared to accept this. For the past year, I've been diligently planning my wedding, set to take place next month. However, last week, my mother invited me to her home under the guise of discussing wedding arrangements. When I arrived, I was greeted not only by my mother, but also by my aunts. The conversation about wedding arrangements initially started on a positive note, but took an unexpected turn towards my sister's attendance at the wedding. Needless to say, I firmly refused to invite her. Right on cue, my mother's tears began to flow, pleading with me in desperation. I felt frustrated by her attempt to corner me, especially with the support of my aunts. I walked away from the chaotic scene, my mother chasing after me, shouting something about family values. Feeling exasperated, I discussed the entire situation with David, my brother, my in-laws, and my best friend. Going over all the details only reinforced the fact that my mother would always prioritize Becky, disregarding my emotions and feelings. Finally, yesterday, I decided to make one last call to my mother to inform her that her invitation had been revoked. Shortly after the call, my phone started ringing incessantly. Relatives called to label me as ungrateful and childish, questioning my actions. To those who inquired about my relationship with my brother, he had remained in touch with me throughout and distanced himself from our parents once he turned 18, the fallout with my sister being the last straw. Now, onto the actual update. As many of you speculated, my mother had twisted the story to her advantage, painting it as a fight over a guy that led to me storming out of the house. These lies crumbled when one of my aunts called my brother, criticizing him for supporting me. He set the record straight by narrating the entire ordeal, leaving a pin-drop silence on the other end. Moreover, he shared screenshots of some message exchanges between him and Becky during their fallout, clarifying the situation. My mother faced severe backlash from multiple family members for her deceit, and most of them are now on my side. Despite this, she still has a few supporters, but they have been blocked from communicating with my brother and me. What should have been a joyous time in my life has turned into a chaotic spectacle. I can only hope that this will be the final update. Interestingly, today took an unexpected turn when I spotted my mother's car near my home. As I approached, my best friend decided to talk to her and convince her to stay away from me. As I sat hidden in my car, away from my mother's sight, My best friend approached her. It felt like an eternity, but after about 45 minutes, she messaged me that it was safe to come inside. Once settled in the house, my friend recounted her conversation with my mother. It appeared that my sister had faced some difficult situations in college due to her arrogant demeanor. The most significant of these was my ex cheating on her with another girl, leaving her heartbroken and with an STD. The news of her contracting the STD quickly spread among her friends and acquaintances, leading to resentment and hostility from many. Feeling alienated, Becky transferred to a new college far from home. She sought counseling there, which wasn't an option before, given my parents' resistance to the idea. According to my mother, Becky had cut off contact with her after our father's death. She seemed remorseful for her past actions. When the topic of my marriage arose, my mother devised a plan to invite her to force a reconciliation. However, my refusal to invite her thwarted these plans, preventing her favorite child from reuniting with her. My friend made it clear that the decision of who to invite was entirely mine and firmly warned my mother that any attempt to approach me would result in exposure on social media for the world to witness. I find myself torn about the entire situation. While I am certain that I don't want either of them at my wedding, I can't help but feel some sympathy for my sister, considering the challenges she faced. Yet, these emotions are overshadowed by the memories of her deliberate attempts to hurt me. I once adored her as my sweet little sister, hoping she would change. However, the day I learned about the rumors she spread, I was utterly crushed and inconsolable. It was David who encouraged me to seek counseling and later therapy. Without his and my friends' unwavering support, I might have been an emotional wreck. I sincerely hope that Becky can work on her issues with her therapist and undergo a transformation, becoming a better person in the process, perhaps in the future. I am open to the possibility of reconciling with my sister, but at this moment, I am far from ready to meet her. As many of you suggested, we had a meeting scheduled with the vendors and the wedding planner. We've taken steps to ensure security during the wedding and the reception. You've made the right decision by not giving in to your mother's demands. She clearly attempted to manipulate the situation in her favor, putting you in a difficult spot in front of your aunts. It might be helpful to check out the subreddit r/raised_narcissists. To address another issue, I really enjoy wearing scarves in my hair. However, my boyfriend isn't the type to give gifts. It was surprising when he unexpectedly showed up at my place with a scarf. Although it had some stains, it was beautiful. I washed it, and it quickly became my favorite. A few days later, when I went to his parents' place to discuss our wedding, his sister became fixated on the scarf. Suddenly, she approached me and tried to pull it off, accusing me of stealing it from her. I was shocked and confused, explaining that my boyfriend had given it to me, but she wouldn't listen, calling me a liar and even mentioning old nail polish stains on it that she had dropped. I took off the scarf, threw it at her, and left before my boyfriend joined us. When he later asked where I was, I told him I had gone home. When he returned, we had a major argument. In the original post, I didn't provide some necessary information. He confessed that the scarf had belonged to his mom, who had given it to his sister years ago. She hadn't even worn it, and he found it in the storeroom, thinking of giving it to me instead of it going to waste. Now, I think it's important for your boyfriend to understand that if he wants to give you a gift, he should buy it rather than taking something without permission. Technically, you unknowingly received stolen property due to his actions. While the scarf might not hold significant monetary value, the situation left you feeling utterly humiliated. This happened to me, but with a necklace. X gave me a lovely necklace, and I wore it. Some friends saw it and said it looked like the one she had. We checked, and it turned out to be hers. The catch on the chain was slightly loose, just as she described. After examining it further, there was no doubt it was her necklace. The person who had given it to me had borrowed it from her a week prior, and he had then given it to me. We were both incredibly angry. He became an ex, and thankfully, she got her property back. Your sister-in-law could have discussed this with you before accusing you outright. Most people don't wear stolen items in front of their owners, and there could have been another explanation, especially if you hadn't been in her room or had no access to her belongings. Her reaction was over the top, and she was clearly angry. However, your soon-to-be ex-boyfriend put you both in a terrible situation. He stole from her, gave it to you, and let you walk around wearing the scarf without ever mentioning where he got it. That's messed up. He's either oblivious to how bad it looks, or he's calculating. You should seriously reconsider being with someone like that. You deserve better than a stolen, stained scarf. I'm a 16-year-old male with an older sister who is 20. She moved out for university 2 years ago, and our relationship was fine until about a month ago when she suddenly went no contact with us. Some background information is important here. Her relationship with our parents has always been messy, with frequent arguments and drama. She saw me as someone she could trust and shared things about our parents with me. Our parents insisted on the importance of education and made it clear that dropping out or getting low marks was a shame on them. They would frequently argue with each other and involve me in their arguments, not hesitating to bring up each other's past. They argued about everything from cheating to paying for her tuition and rent, among other things. Returning to the main topic, her 20th birthday was approaching, and we wanted to pay her a surprise visit. The problem was that we didn't know her address. She had moved to a new apartment, which sparked a major argument between my mom and dad. My mom blamed my dad for not taking her and dropping her off when she moved. This argument initiated everything. In summary, we tried to contact her through calls and emails, but my dad ended up going to the police to investigate, which led to finding out that she had dropped out and was in hiding. She had told me more about it, as she trusted me more than our parents. This is where I might have made a mistake. Later, while my parents and I were in the living room, they began arguing, and one of the main points was the fact that my sister had left us without notice. They were discussing possible reasons for her actions at this point. I was absolutely furious with my parents for their delusional behavior, so I blurted out something along the lines of, "Yeah, you guys scared her. You pressured her and created damn scenarios in her head. No wonder she doesn't like you. Who's your next target, me?" The next thing I knew, I was in a heated argument with my parents. They kept telling me to mind my own business and not interfere in other people's lives. It was like my sister's situation all over again. I couldn't take it anymore, so I told them to go to hell, stormed up to my room, and adopted the classic rebellious teenage demeanor. My 39-year-old uncle found out about the situation, and I explained everything to him. He supported me, further infuriating my parents. They accused me of ruining them, as if they couldn't care less, and refused to reflect on their own actions that led to this mess. Am I the one at fault here? Here's some unsolicited advice that might help, although it may not directly apply to your situation. I grew up in a similar environment. My parents would drunkenly tear each other apart almost every night. Sometimes I'd intervene to stop them. Other times I'd shout from the stairs, but nothing worked. At 18, before leaving for university, I confronted my dad and asked how long he thought they'd last. He didn't have an answer. What I didn't realize then was the deep psychological damage witnessing this had caused me. Faced with intimacy, I'd shut down entirely. Looking back, it was a flight or fight response. While I matured emotionally in some ways, my growth was stunted, especially in relationships. I never received therapy, and I regret not considering it. I managed to work through it on my own, but therapy would have been incredibly helpful. If possible, talking to someone about your experiences could be beneficial. Good luck. Well, look at the consequences of their actions. I'm sorry, OP, I'm not sure of a solution. Technically, you're stuck with them for a bit longer, depending on your situation. Perhaps you can consider living with your uncle if that's an option. I don't have specific advice for your situation, but I don't blame you for speaking your mind and telling them the truth. My older sister, 28, and I, 24, were once incredibly close. We maintained this bond until a few months ago when my sister, who had recently become engaged to her boyfriend Tyler, 30, suddenly cut off all contact with me. It was a puzzling situation given our close relationship. I had eagerly accepted her invitation to be her maid of honor, actively participating in the wedding preparations. However, around 2 months ago, she inexplicably stopped talking to me. She removed me from the bridesmaids group chat, ignored my calls and texts, and even refused to let me into her house when I visited. The lack of communication and her unexplained behavior left me hurt and confused. My parents were as clueless as I was about this sudden change in her behavior. Despite the silence, I tried to carry on with my life, but her actions continued to weigh on my mind. The final blow came when the wedding invitations arrived, and I did not receive one. It shattered me emotionally, as my sister and I had been inseparable growing up. Still, I respected her wishes and didn't confront her about it. Yesterday, my sister got married, and my emotional state was at its lowest. I spent the day in bed, drowning my feelings in food, feeling awful for not being there as her maid of honor, as we had planned. Then, an unexpected call from my mother brought some clarity. During her wedding speech, my sister mentioned me and accused me of trying to steal Tyler from her at their engagement party. She joked about how I had a history of taking her things, but assumed I would stop at clothes and not go after her future husband. This revelation made everyone uncomfortable, and my mother was furious. I tried to explain to my mother that I hadn't done any such thing, but she was too upset to listen to me. She was angrier with my sister for airing our dirty laundry in front of our family and friends. Since she couldn't confront my sister on her wedding day, I bore the brunt of her anger. Finally, I realized why my sister had cut me out of her life, and I placed the blame on Tyler. A few days before the silent treatment began, I had attended my sister's engagement party, wearing a lavender dress she had bought for me. I had enjoyed some drinks, including champagne, and found myself feeling quite drunk. I refrained from questioning Tyler's intentions when he asked me to accompany him to the kitchen for more snacks. Although I found it odd that he chose me over my sister, I brushed it off as a minor detail. In the kitchen, he complimented my appearance in my dress, and I thanked him. That's when he started suggesting that I didn't need to dress up to catch his attention, implying that I could attract him effortlessly. In my drunken state, I attempted to diffuse the situation with a sarcastic remark, stating that it was my intention all along. I meant it as a joke, but Tyler seemed to take it seriously, staring at me intensely. Just then, my sister walked in, seemingly cheerful, and ushered us out, urging us to enjoy ourselves. I didn't think much of the incident at that time, but looking back, I realized that this might have been the reason for her anger. I regret not addressing it then and there, but I never thought my sister would believe I was flirting with her fiancé. I would never do something like that to her or anyone else. I blame the alcohol for my lapse in judgment. I wish my sister had confronted me about it instead of cutting me out of her life without an explanation. If she had given me a chance to explain, this whole situation could have been avoided. I hold Tyler responsible for the mess, as he was the one flirting with me at his own engagement party. If anyone should have been cut out of her life, it should have been him, not me. Now that I understand the reason for her anger, I'm torn between feeling foolish for my sarcastic response and frustrated that my sister didn't talk to me about it. I'm uncertain how to proceed, especially since I now know the truth about what happened that night. Eventually, after my mother's persistent efforts, my sister agreed to meet me for lunch, and I invited her to my house, hoping to finally resolve this misunderstanding. I hesitated to discuss the matter in front of Tyler. The atmosphere was tense, and my sister appeared distant, which stung a little. Yet, I understood her aloofness now. Despite my understanding, I was put off by the fact that she hadn't bothered to talk to me earlier about what she'd heard. As soon as we were seated, I didn't waste a moment and swiftly apologized for my sarcastic comment at the party. I clarified that I was incredibly drunk and had intended it as a joke. I emphasized that I would never do anything so disrespectful to her, and I had zero interest in Tyler. The conversation that day had been initiated by Tyler, and I had attempted to lighten the intensity with humor, given my shock at his advances and my intoxicated state. While explaining, my sister looked increasingly perplexed and interjected, claiming she thought I had initiated the conversation. Apparently, after the party, she confronted Tyler, who concocted a story where he painted me as the aggressor. He alleged that he flirted with me that one time because he was afraid I might harm myself or create a scene in my drunken state. To validate his story, he showed her a selfie he had downloaded from my Facebook account, falsely claiming I had sent it to him. According to him, I had been persistently texting him, making him uncomfortable for months. He said today's incident was the final straw. He even shed a few tears to enhance his act, which my sister, unfortunately, fell for. I displayed my inbox, revealing the truth about my limited interactions with Tyler. As I shared this, my sister appeared utterly disoriented, caught between believing her sister and the manipulative tale spun by Tyler. Ordinarily, I would have expected her to unquestioningly trust me, being her sister. However, the situation had become painfully complicated. My sister had just married a man who, as it turned out, had been deceiving her all along, even to the point of lying about me. She felt like her entire world had been turned upside down, and I empathized deeply with her situation. I regretted not being forthright with her that day, choosing instead to avoid confrontation. I knew that if I had spoken up then, this entire mess could have been avoided. Once the truth came out, my sister didn't say much and left, but I understood the turmoil she was going through. Ultimately, the decision of whom to believe rested with her, and I respected that. I had done my part by sharing my side of the story, the truth. Now, all I could do was hope for a positive resolution for both of us. As for Tyler, I had no sympathy for him. He could go to hell, as far as I was concerned. The last time I talked to my sister was a devastating experience for her, realizing that her husband might not have been truthful and that she could be with the wrong person was a harsh reality. That was 3 days ago, and since then, significant developments occurred. My sister confronted Tyler about his claims regarding me hitting on him. Initially, he vehemently denied it, labeling me a liar with no morals, accusing me of attempting to break them up. However, under my sister's persistent questioning, he eventually confessed. He admitted fabricating the entire story that night, shifting the blame onto me. He tried to pass it off as a drunken mistake, but his lie unraveled. Tyler had intentionally flirted with me, sober and fully aware, initiating the inappropriate conversation that my sister had overheard. To cover his despicable attempt at cheating, he devised an elaborate lie, causing my sister to cut ties with me for weeks over something that wasn't my fault. My sister couldn't forgive Tyler for his deceit. Not only had he attempted to flirt with me at their engagement celebration, but he also lied about it, deeply hurting her trust. They had a heated argument, during which Tyler attempted to gaslight her, shifting the blame back onto her for pressuring him. His attempt to minimize his actions only worsened the situation. This altercation shattered any chance he had at redemption. Frustrated and hurt, my sister left their home and came to me for support yesterday. Instead, she was visibly upset and hardly discussed her feelings, which was concerning since my sister had a tendency to bottle up her emotions until they reached a breaking point, leading to inevitable mental breakdowns. I've already started searching for family attorneys who can assist with an annulment or divorce, whatever the next step may be. I'm certain she won't return to him, given that she hasn't responded to his calls or texts and has instructed me to block him from her phone and delete their pictures together. She simply can't bring herself to do it. It's truly heartbreaking. What it is. Personally, I'm relieved that she's ending the relationship, even though it's been less than a week since they got married. I don't believe Tyler deserves someone as wonderful as my sister. One morning, she saw me quietly crying at breakfast and inquired about the reason for my distress. I hesitated to explain it to her, as I felt responsible for her marriage falling apart in less than a week. If only I hadn't acted foolishly on the night of her engagement party. Instead of responding sarcastically to brush it off, maybe I should have told her what happened that night. Perhaps she would have realized right then and there that he was unfaithful and wouldn't remain loyal to her. That could have saved both of us a lot of heartache and misery. I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt about what had transpired. Fortunately, my sister was understanding and tried to console me. Even in the midst of her own significant ordeal, she reassured me that she didn't blame me. She recognized that I was intoxicated that night and not thinking clearly. She trusted me implicitly and believed that if it had occurred while I was sober, I would have immediately approached her and revealed the truth. The reality was that it never even crossed my mind later on that she might have overheard the conversation. which is why I didn't inform her about it afterward, even when I had sobered up. I was too apprehensive about appearing like a homewrecker, despite not being one. I confessed this to her, and she reassured me that she didn't think any less of me for hesitating to share what had happened, even after I had sobered up. It was a confusing and unprecedented situation for both of us, and she couldn't guarantee that she would have reacted kindly or believed my account of Tyler's advances had I told her. We both made mistakes, but what mattered was recognizing them and striving to improve. Instead of dwelling on the situation, my sister chose to forgive me and encouraged me to do the same. I consider myself incredibly fortunate that she decided to be kind and understanding. She truly is the best older sister I could have asked for. Honestly, they are going to file for divorce with mutual consent. It has been a week since my sister moved out, and Tyler made desperate attempts to paint me as the villain, but his efforts were in vain. 3 days ago, he visited us, falling to my sister's feet, pleading for her forgiveness. He made numerous promises, vowing never to repeat his actions, professing his love for her. Despite his emotional appeals, my sister remained resolute, firmly rejecting any possibility of reconciliation. I was present during the entire conversation, and when Tyler realized that my sister wasn't going to blindly believe him, he resorted to blaming me for everything that had transpired. Tyler had the audacity to fabricate lies about me right in front of me. This led to a heated argument between us. He accused me of flirting with him and dropping hints, alleging that I wore that dress just for him and had followed him to the kitchen intentionally. According to him, my laughter at his jokes and supposed stolen glances were signals I had sent his way. It was almost pathetic how he was trying to portray me as the homewrecker. The truth was, I was laughing because I was tipsy, and my laughter wasn't reserved for him alone. His claims about stolen glances were entirely imaginary. I had chosen not to wear my glasses that day and was squinting because I could barely see in the dim lighting. None of his accusations held any truth, and I firmly confronted him, putting him in his place. The argument escalated to the point where my sister had to step in to prevent any physical confrontation. Tyler was in my face, refusing to back down, attempting to intimidate me. However, his efforts were futile. Despite my smaller size, I was trained in jiu-jitsu, and I was prepared to defend myself and my sister if he laid a finger on us. I was on the verge of confronting him physically, ready to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. He was fortunate my sister decided to intervene before things escalated further. Despite his failed attempt to blame me, he resorted to profuse apologies and tears. I feared my sister might fall for his act since he appeared genuinely remorseful, but she instructed me to leave the room while she spoke to him privately. Reluctantly, I stepped out, trusting my sister's judgment, even though I was unwilling to leave her alone with that jerk. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the door close, signaling his departure. My sister appeared visibly dejected, and I patiently waited for her to share their conversation. I didn't want to push her boundaries, so I occupied myself by preparing dinner while she rested in bed. After our meal, she finally opened up to me. She told Tyler that she appreciated the time they spent together, but his betrayal had shattered her trust completely. She calmly explained to him that his willingness to cheat indicated he didn't truly love or want her. Despite the potential embarrassment of divorcing so soon after their marriage, she firmly believed it was the right decision. She didn't want to invest her time in someone who didn't value her for who she was. She pointed out that Tyler's desperation to salvage their relationship stemmed from societal perceptions, not genuine feelings. She knew he cared little about her emotions, and although it was heartbreaking, she couldn't change that fact. With surprising emotion, they bid each other goodbye, tears staining their farewell, leaving me profoundly saddened for her. However, I was relieved that she wouldn't be trapped in an unhappy, loveless marriage. I marveled at how gracefully she handled the situation. That's where the story ends for today. Thank you for listening. If you have your own story, feel free to send us an email. The email address is in the description. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. I have a lazy sister who, believe it or not, made me jeopardize my career by putting my neck on the line to secure her a job. Loyalty to family can sometimes be the greatest burden, and I speak from personal experience. Let me introduce you to my sister, Stella, who is a year younger than me. We are the products of our mother's love life, which never led to marriage. The closest thing we had to a father figure was Uncle Greg, our mother's brother, who had been looking after us for as long as I can remember. It's incredible how, from the way we carried ourselves, you'd never guess we were being supported by someone who had his own family. I graduated from college before Stella and was desperately searching for a job. Knowing Uncle Greg's influence, I approached him for help. After expressing my gratitude for everything he'd done for us, I opened up about my job search. We discussed it for a while, during which I could sense that he was assessing whether my college education had been a waste or not. Fortunately, he seemed satisfied with my qualifications and promised to help me secure a job. Uncle Greg was a man of his word, so I was overjoyed. 3 days later, he called and asked me to bring all my documents to a company. To my amazement, he had secured me a position as the head of human resources. This was beyond my expectations. I had zero experience and was fresh out of college. Nonetheless, I was determined to prove myself, not wanting to let my uncle down. A year later, Stella also graduated from college and embarked on her job hunt, which proved unsuccessful. I suggested that she visit Uncle Greg for assistance, and I planned to accompany her. However, my concern was that Uncle Greg, who had high standards, would be disappointed upon meeting my sister, a law graduate. I too was disappointed, but I knew I had to let Uncle Greg assess Stella for himself. We arrived at Uncle Greg's place, and he engaged my sister in a conversation. I remained mostly silent, and even I could tell that she appeared unrefined. Uncle Greg didn't say anything about my sister, but the disappointment in his eyes was evident. After some time, he promised to help her in her job search. 2 weeks passed, and Stella hadn't received a favorable response from Uncle Greg. She reached out to him, but he would merely say he was working on it. One evening, our mother and sister approached me for a discussion after I returned from work. Exhausted, I asked to have the conversation the following morning before I headed to work. They both woke me up early the next day, and Stella started by expressing her frustration with Uncle Greg, who she believed was taking too long to find her a job. I defended him, emphasizing how good he'd been to us and that she needed to be patient. Stella, however, insinuated that Uncle Greg was now playing favorites between us, citing how quickly he had found me a job, while she had waited for weeks. Our mother chimed in, suggesting a solution for Stella's joblessness. I was initially happy for my sister until I heard the proposed solution. Our mother suggested that I use my influence as the head of human resources in my company to hire Stella as a sales agent with a high salary. I was shocked and turned to Stella to see if it was a joke. Our mother further argued that it was only natural for someone in my position to do so. She claimed that since I was the head of my department, nobody would question the hire. I hesitated to say no immediately and asked Stella if she had any experience as a sales agent. She retorted by asking if it was necessary, given her law degree. It was frustrating to see her demand a job for which she lacked the qualifications and experience. To make matters worse, both she and our mother were insisting on a high salary for her. I made it clear to my family that what they were asking for was simply not feasible. I explained to my mom that Stella's law degree had no connection to my line of work. She raised her voice, insisting that I should look at the bigger picture, which, according to her, was the substantial salary Stella would earn once I secured the job for her. I pointed out that fulfilling their request could jeopardize my career, as it might appear as favoritism if my superiors found out I'd employed someone unfit for the job. My mother and sister, however, dismissed my explanation, accusing me of not prioritizing family success. This was when I truly understood the bondage that family loyalty could become. How could they insinuate that I didn't want our family to succeed just because I declined to risk my career for their sake? It felt like pure selfishness. I reiterated my earlier stance and prepared some food. The rest of the day passed in silence, but the discussion continued to weigh on my mind. There was no way I could accede to their demands. I hadn't even been on the job for 2 years, and it wasn't time to act like I owned the place. My mom and sister started giving me the cold shoulder, essentially trying to guilt-trip me. I felt miserable in my own home, so I began intentionally coming home late to spend less time there. However, that tactic didn't improve the situation. I finally decided to seek advice from someone I knew would offer an unbiased perspective, Uncle Greg. One day, I stopped by Uncle Greg's place on my way home from work and shared everything that had been happening at home, except for the part where Stella accused him of playing favorites. Uncle Greg listened and assured me that getting a job for my sister was not a difficult task for him. He mentioned that he'd been stalling the process because he had doubts about her capabilities for the job, even in her field. He pointed out certain observations he'd made during their discussions, which I agreed with. Uncle Greg explained that if he recommended my sister for a job, it would put his own reputation at risk with his friends who were her potential employers. He made it clear that she didn't meet their expectations and could damage his standing. He also revealed that the talk of not wanting family success was an emotional ploy to manipulate and guilt-trip me into doing their bidding. He urged me not to sacrifice my budding career for my selfish sibling and suggested that I consider moving out of the house and renting my own apartment if the pressure became too much. Uncle Greg's words deeply resonated with me, and he was right. I needed to let my mother and sister understand that I was an independent person who couldn't be swayed in any direction they wished. But despite this realization, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I decided to make a one-time compromise for Stella's sake. One morning, I approached Stella and asked her to come to the office later that day to pick up her appointment letter. The relief in her demeanor was palpable, and my mother smiled, assuring me that I was making the right decision, even though I knew she was wrong. I was unknowingly setting myself up for a major disaster. Stella came to the office, received her appointment letter, and commenced work. However, the real issue was her lack of productivity, which was evident. The problem was that her role was not in her field of expertise. 2 months later, most of the staff began complaining about Stella's performance. I had to address the issue with my sister before it escalated further. I pointed out that she was not contributing to the company, yet she was overpaid compared to some hardworking, productive colleagues. I explained that, under normal circumstances, firing her would be the best option for the company, but I was using my influence to delay such a decision. Stella defended herself, claiming she was still new to the job and needed time to learn the ropes. While her reasoning was understandable, the real problem was her lack of effort and enthusiasm. She seemed to be lethargic, simply waiting for payday. Just as I was about to dismiss her, she dropped the bombshell. Stella said she was considering taking a 1-month paid leave to attend to her health, despite no apparent health issues. I knew this was just an excuse. Here was someone on the verge of facing multiple complaints, and all she seemed interested in was stirring up trouble. I sternly warned Stella against entertaining the idea of a leave and threatened to fire her if she attempted it. I didn't let the matter rest. When I got home, I brought it to our mother's attention. I reminded her of her assurance to help Stella secure a job. And now, barely 2 months into her employment, Stella was requesting 2 months of paid leave. I made it clear to our mother that if Stella's productivity didn't improve by the end of the month, I would ensure she got fired. Our mother downplayed the situation, suggesting that Stella would get the hang of it in due time. She asked me to be patient with my sister. I agreed to give Stella the month to improve her productivity, and my course of action would be determined by her performance. I patiently waited for my sister to step up and be more productive, but it was a regrettable situation for both of us. Unfortunately, my superior got wind of the ongoing complaints and summoned Stella and me. During the review, it was revealed that Stella hadn't been productive since she started as a sales agent, and I had failed to take the necessary action, which would have been reporting the issue to management. My favoritism was exposed, and we were both immediately terminated. I began pleading for my job on the spot, but I was informed that the decision was final. Stella, on the other hand, rather than showing humility, stated that the job was beneath her, considering her educational qualifications, and walked out of the office while I remained on my knees begging to retain my job. I regretted not heeding Uncle Greg's warnings. His predictions had become a reality. and I had allowed my sister to ruin my career. I returned home, a mixture of tears and anger in my heart, only to find Stella casually sitting on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, watching a movie, seemingly undisturbed by the whole ordeal. I immediately confronted Stella, and we started exchanging heated words. Our mother rushed to the scene, trying to calm the situation. At this point, Stella hadn't shared what had happened, and my anger was directed towards our mother. I began shouting at her, holding her responsible for emotionally blackmailing me into bringing Stella to my workplace. When she learned what had transpired, our mother raised her voice in return and demanded that I never speak to her in such a manner. I regretted that I had been disrespectful, but was unable to control my emotions at that moment. Feeling overwhelmed and wanting to avoid doing something regrettable, I ran out of the house. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew I needed to be far away from them before my anger got the best of me. I stayed in a hotel for 3 days, crying and not hearing from my mother or sister. After a while, I decided to visit Uncle Greg. He was surprised to see me, especially on a weekday when I should have been at work. He asked about the issue, and I couldn't hold back my tears. It took some time for him to console me, and then I began telling him how I regretted not heeding his earlier warnings. What I didn't mention was that I'd been avoiding his house and calls ever since I helped Stella get the job, because I knew it would disappoint him, and I was right. Uncle Greg was initially upset with me for not listening, but his anger quickly turned to empathy as he understood the pressure of family expectations. He didn't want to discuss the matter further. He simply asked me to get into his car, and we drove back to our house. When Uncle Greg arrived at the house, he was furious. It was the first time either Stella or I had seen him like this. My mother, however, had grown up with her brother and wasn't surprised by his anger. She refused to take responsibility for my job loss and defended herself by stating that all she did was ask me to help my sister secure a job. She and Stella turned the tables on me, claiming that I hadn't guided Stella properly at work. Uncle Greg saw through their attempt to avoid blame and gave them a stern look before assuring me that everything would be okay. He promised to do everything in his power to help me find a new job. I thanked my uncle, who wasted no time in leaving the house. My mother, upon seeing her brother's departure, turned to me and called me a disgrace. She questioned why I had made such a big deal out of the situation and involved someone who had little or no business with it. I couldn't respond the way my emotions wanted me to, so I simply went into my room and closed the door. It has been 2 weeks since the incident, and both my sister and I are jobless. I am not sitting idly, waiting for my uncle to work his magic. I am actively searching for job opportunities and hope for a positive outcome soon. In an update, I can say it has been extremely challenging staying at home with my sister and mother. They have both united against me, making me feel like an outsider in my own family. I returned last week from yet another unsuccessful job hunt, feeling frustrated and exhausted. It appeared that even my uncle was struggling to secure a job for me, and I couldn't blame him. If I had been wiser, I wouldn't find myself in this current disaster. After submitting my qualifications to a firm that promised to get back to me, I decided to rest on the couch for a moment. My short nap was abruptly interrupted about 5 minutes later when my sister started screaming in excitement. She deliberately came to the living room, dramatizing her joy, as if she was deliberately looking for trouble, as she often did. Our mother hurried to her, and she informed her, loud enough for me to hear, that she had been invited for an interview at a law firm. Our mother was thrilled for her, but I tried to mind my own business. However, my sister couldn't resist taking a jab at me, insinuating that she was achieving for herself what sisters and uncles, who claimed to be family, could not do for her. It was a clear reference to me and Uncle Greg. I couldn't allow her to add to my frustration, so I gave a sarcastic laugh, mentioning that people celebrated interview invitations as if they had already landed the job. Not stopping there, I added a cutting remark about interviewers discovering they'd wasted their time with an empty-headed candidate. My sister was visibly affected, and she wanted to confront me, but our mother stepped in, clearly favoring her. This didn't surprise me. I hadn't expected anything different. Stella went for the interview and returned with a smile, informing our mother, right in front of me, that she was preferred over the other candidates and was offered the job on the spot. The pay wasn't as much as she had earned in my firm, but she was assured it would triple in 3 months. My sister and mother took delight in rubbing it in my face, making me wonder about the judgment of the employers who hired her. I also wondered about the quality of the other candidates if Stella was chosen over them. Nevertheless, I decided to wait and see how it would play out because I knew my sister's track record with jobs. In the second update, I had a serious altercation with my mother this morning, all because of my sister Stella. Since she got her job, my mother decided that no one else in the house, except me, should perform any chores, no matter how minor. I had tolerated it until this morning when my mother approached me and demanded that I do Stella's laundry. The demand was insulting, and I refused outright. I told my mother that I wouldn't touch my sister's clothing even if there was a gun to my head. My mother argued that Stella needed to focus on her new job, something she claimed I lacked. According to her, we should support her in any way we could. I asked my mother if Stella had ever done my laundry when I had my job. I finally told her that if Stella was too busy to do her laundry, she could do it herself or take it to one of the numerous dry cleaning services in the city. I retreated to my room, closing the door, feeling utterly humiliated. How could my mother demand that I do Stella's laundry? I decided to reach out to Uncle Greg and inform him about the humiliation I was enduring at the hands of my mother and sister. I was hoping for some good news, but amidst the torrent of insults I faced daily, my uncle revealed he was still trying to pull a few strings, though it might take time. He expressed his displeasure with the way my family was treating me and assured me he would talk some sense into my younger sister. One evening, as I was in my room, Stella returned from work and started arguing loudly over the phone. From her words, I gathered she was speaking to Uncle Greg. She rebuked him for meddling in our affairs and demanded he stay away from us. When my mother asked her about the call, Stella referred to Uncle Greg as that man who doesn't know his place. My mother seemed to approve of Stella's stance, believing I was foolish for involving an outsider in our family matters. In the third update, I made the decision to move in with Uncle Greg and his family after Stella's outburst. It became evident to him that I was enduring a lot at home. I informed my mother about my decision, but she dismissed it, claiming I had been trying to distance myself from her and Stella anyway. The only time I saw or heard from Stella was a month later when she showed up at Uncle Greg's place to invite both of us to an award event organized by her firm. According to Stella, the event aimed to recognize the efforts of key individuals, and she was one of the honorees. She wanted Uncle Greg and me to attend, perhaps to showcase her productivity. I confronted her, telling her she should be apologizing to Uncle Greg instead of inviting him to the party. Stella, undeterred, made condescending remarks, claiming she was offering him an opportunity to witness her glory. I refused to attend the event, expressing my disgust at the entire situation. Uncle Greg tried to convince me otherwise, but I couldn't comprehend why he wanted us to attend a party that seemed nothing more than a charade. In the final update, everything fell into place. I finally understood why Uncle Greg insisted we attend Stella's party. In the end, despite the difficult situation, Uncle Greg insisted that I present myself at my best for Stella's party. Reluctantly, I attended the event alongside my mother. As the ceremony unfolded, individuals were recognized for their contributions. When it was Stella's turn, she confidently stepped onto the podium, radiating confidence. Unexpectedly, she cut off her boss's statement and began speaking passionately. Her words were pointed directly at me, emphasizing her triumph over the hurdles she claimed I couldn't overcome. She labeled me a failure lacking the drive to succeed. Stella praised our mother, who basked in the attention. However, to my astonishment, Stella's boss invited Uncle Greg to the stage. Surprised, Stella watched as Uncle Greg debunked her claims. He revealed the truth about how I lost my job due to Stella's actions and our mother's selfishness. Uncle Greg disclosed that he orchestrated this scheme to expose Stella's lack of productivity. Stella was publicly fired on stage, drowning in shame. My mother hurriedly left, unable to bear the humiliation. Uncle Greg introduced me to influential people that day, assuring me that a job opportunity would emerge soon. I severed ties with my mother and sister, knowing they would likely come crawling back for assistance eventually. Looking back, I am grateful for Uncle Greg's support during this ordeal. If not for him, I might have faced this situation alone. Reflecting on this experience, I am overwhelmed by the twists of fate and the importance of having a strong support system. I welcome your thoughts on this story. What would you have done in my position? Consider this twist. What if I didn't have Uncle Greg to fall back on? Share your opinions in the comments below. My name is Mr. Reddito, and I share drama stories every day, ranging from inheritance disputes to cheating tales. If you enjoy these narratives, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow, reminding you that kindness is always